This is now take two, guys. I am so sorry. We had to change location and everything so that kitties and everyone is, enjoying themselves. As you can see, I am now in the living room. And as I was saying, Mom, I want to start with this conversation about my I can't even stop. Why did my marriage end? Because when I tell people, yes, my ex-husband, and you remember the big act that it was to get the divorce, and I'm very thankful that, it was a smooth, in terms of definition of divorce, everything went very well. But the tea with that was that I remember when we went down to the courthouse and the my witnesses or my friends were telling me, you sure you want to do this? And I was like, yes, what's the worst that can happen, so So yeah, in any case, I said, yeah, what's the worst that can happen? And I'm very happy for the experience because it was through that experience that I could learn a lot of things about myself. I mean, um it wasn't a bad marriage. It was just that I changed myself, or I was changing in terms of how I define relationships and what it is that is important to me in a relationship, and the sacredness of marriage when it comes to two people um two people that are coming together for the purpose of starting a family. And so one of the reasons that my marriage did not work out is because we were not in alignment in that case at all. I did not want to have children with this person because I later realized that they were not the person that I thought they were. They weren't bad. He wasn't a bad person. He was just not in alignment with the things that I wanted. And I changed my definition of what I think a marriage is. In the time, it was just like, oh, yes, boy, it's something to do, like, blase, blase. And, later on, you understand that maybe that's not the best way to do things, you know? And so he went his separate way and I did. And the reason why we ended up getting, or the way we ended up getting divorced, is because he met somebody else and he needed a divorce. And so, I was happy to give it to him because I had also met somebody else. But I went around the place in the meantime, between time when we were, I guess, separated, pretending to be single again, like, and single married, yeah. We could talk about that in one session as, as a whole thing. But I felt like, um, okay, so this relationship has ended. I had tried to get the marriage annulled, but then I wasn't granted annulment, and they told me, well, just wait a year, maybe you guys come back together. And I was trying to explain to these people at the government office, I don't love this person. I have nothing to think about. I want this to end. And so they're like, well, we don't just give an annulment just like that. You have to give reason. And so I ended up doing all of these hooplas, and it was one of these things. So I wish I knew how to. I'm gonna learn how to, like, put a checklist in the box when we have, like, points in our conversation. But one of the things that I learned about having something like this hanging in the air is that it affects your organizationality. Is that a thing? Like, you know when you need to go get your social security. If my social security expired while still being married, I would then have to put his name on my social security. If anything happened to me, which it did, there was a big thing with his name, and they were trying to figure out if Cynthia, my oldest daughter, was his daughter because he's an American, and I would have been in legal issues if that was his child, and I would need his permission. It was a lot of stuff. So when you don't deal with these issues, which is the real reason a lot of men don't want to marry the women that they are allegedly claiming to be committed to, is because it becomes a legally binding contract that you will have to face in some point in time, and it costs. Like they say, it's cheaper to keep her. that is that is just no joke. And so I really admire his wife. I mean, I'm not sure if they're still together, but his wife was the one who contacted me and arranged for the whole process to take place so that she can get married to him. And so when he did that, then I was able to take care of my business. But when I wanted to get married, so please go grab your cup of tea, pause this video if you need to, and come back. I'll wait. When I needed to get married, or when I was getting ready to get married and move to Germany, I ended up waiting an entire year because somebody at the immigration office saw that I was divorced and had a child, and that I was divorced from somebody who was American, and that person assumed that the child was from the marriage and wanted to have the ex-husband prove beyond reasonable doubt that he is okay with me remarrying. And that process took a whole year because they didn't come. You have to wait until the cake cools. Just a moment. So I had to then say to them, look, these two people are in no way related. You may be having a concern that you don't want to express without offending me. I will not be offended. This is not his child. His name is not on any of her legal documents. Please just sign the papers so that I can move on with my life. And that took an entire year. And I say this because these things can seem extremely daunting to do, but it's all a part of how you are able to manage and maintain a certain standard in life where you're not burdened or held ransom because you have a lot of loose ends that you're procrastinating about handling. And I'm not saying this from a judgmental perspective. I'm saying this from a perspective of somebody who deals with this all of the time. Mom, you know how many times I've lost my passport, how many times I've had to, fix my name on my birth certificate, how many times they have all kinds of documents, and you can just end up being very overwhelmed with having to deal with these kinds of things. But when you are marrying somebody, baptism, anything, registering a document, please be very, very aware of the importance of what that document means legally and emotionally for you and for everybody else involved. I also want to go back to the whole thing about the marriage. I was at a very let me talk to myself very nicely here. I was at a very interesting point in my life where I, like I said, saw marriage as something that was just like something to do and a new adventure. And now I see it as a legally and spiritually binding contract between two people that makes them one. And who you bind yourself with will determine a lot of things in your life as a person and as a group, as a unit. And it's very, very important to respect that sacrament, because you and that person may have a different understanding about what that sacrament means. So I can speak openly to an extent where my ex-husband felt like, even though it was a marriage of convenience, I was supposed to bear children for him. And that came after the marriage, because we married very quickly. And I was like, I'm not going to be having any kids for you, because having a child means that I'm gonna have to deal with you forever. And he was like, but you married me, you know? How is that any less of a commitment than than having a child? And so I was just even having that conversation was extremely important for me to was extremely important for me to rethink about the life choices that I was making, because we might want to say that. Just a minute. So I just want to say that you might say to yourself that, this is an experience. This is gonna be fun. And I think people have that attitude towards having children as well. But when you mature and when you start to see life in a more with a different level of awareness, let's say it like that, with a real true sense of awareness, you start to appreciate and understand things with more care and sacredness. And that's what happened for me. Yeah, so it was like a thing, like I just did it, it was fun, and then I started to realize, okay, this is really serious, and I'm not going to take this kind of thing lightly. And so I completely changed the way I viewed those kinds of things, because of my experience, because he was very upset, and the relationship disintegrated very quickly. So yeah, it was a great lesson for me to start to notice and understand, okay, I have to have a sort of a plan or a checklist, like how you like to say a script. Yes. Oh, a lot of excitement here. So yeah, we just I was just like, okay, maybe this wasn't the best idea ever, and I'm cool with it. And I just kind of left it hanging for a year or two until this young lady came and was like, I am so and so's girlfriend, and we are engaged to be married, and I really would like for you to sign the divorce papers so that we can make this happen. And I think in the beginning she felt like maybe I didn't want to do it. Um, I didn't get anything out of the experience other than knowing that marriage is something sacred and important, and I would never do this again if I didn't love the person and didn't want to build a future and a family and have children with that person. And having that conversation with yourself and having that awareness is the most important thing that anybody can do for themselves and for the other person before getting entangled in any situation that can potentially be, you know, dangerous, or um, not just dangerous, but just unnecessarily complicated. And so that that was that. And when I tell people, yeah, my ex-husband, people are like, what? Because they think of the white dress with the veil and the 100 invites and the big cake. And it wasn't anything like that. It was, like I said, a marriage of convenience. We just needed to be legally together so that he could, do what he needed to do. But at the end of the day, there was, on his part, a different understanding about um, what that meant. Like, he wanted to have his cake and eat it too. And I wanted to be single married. So
Well, I think that as we are exploring this whole dimension of commitment, that commitment really has to do with awareness of self.
yeah.
And I would invite us in this exploration to take that level of responsibility in the journey, and learn and go deeper in acknowledging, as you have been doing, why the decision to commit and get married, and how that event came up as a maturing process. I, for example, have spent many years single, and really enjoy my single status, and have had many friends, many male friends who I never had any kind of illusion or intention of any commitment with any of them coming from me. There were occasional times when the suggestion was made, and thankfully I was the one to suggest that we wait and explore what that really meant, you know?
Yeah.
And I even was sharing with you earlier on that my friends, especially a girlfriend, maybe 2 years ago, was concerned that I have been
concerned
for so many years. She was
concerned.
A deep concern. Many people often in this time of some 20 plus years were concerned that I was in this single person status. And I would just laugh and take it very lightly and move on to another topic, and assured them that I was very content and at peace and with myself. And so, just to get her off the topic this particular time, about 2 years ago, I just acknowledged and said to her, okay then, because her challenge to me was that wouldn't I be open to meeting someone or dating someone? And in my mind, I said, definitely not, I have no interest. But just to keep her quiet, out of my mouth came the words, okay, all right then, just so that we could move on and enjoy our time together, she and I. And just that agreement activated so many overtures within 2 weeks of my making that agreement. And there were people from different parts of the world who were sharing. These were friends who suddenly began to behave like they wanted to be more than friends, you know? And one particular friend of mine visited, and before his visit, I went into a panic, because here is my wonderful friend of so many years, and we've been having just good fellowship and conversation, and somehow the conversation was shifting, and then I wasn't sure if I was ready for a shift in the conversation. As aware as I was of myself and as comfortable as I was with who I am in my own skin. So what I'm hearing from you is the importance of truly realizing or deciding why make a commitment, why marriage, what is the person's intention or their thought, and how will you together come to that place before you make the decision, before you go into that serious commitment. And all the things that you have said have given an indication of that. One thing I wanted to offer in the discussion today is that thing that you cannot put your finger on, which was a question that I had, was like, how all of a sudden, well, this is what it seemed to me at the time. Now I am more clear. It seemed to me like all of a sudden, this person who had been my friend for so many years was moving in a direction that was looking to be more than just a friend. And then I realized that it was not really an all of a sudden. It was and it is that here I have common understanding, common connection. It's almost like a divine connection. So that love is converging with things that we find in common, and we have always found in common, but we both chose not to activate it until recently. So it wasn't really like all of a sudden. And so I would want to invite you to share if there was any time when you met someone where you didn't even discuss the attraction or the interest. However, that interest was there. You knew, and eventually when you would meet the person, or when it came to touch and communication, you realize that it was there. It's like a magic. It's like a spark. It's like an attraction that was always there, but you couldn't put it into words at the time.
I think that once you start to have relationships with people, like after you get to be a certain age, I think the relationships that I had when I was, it's very interesting because I had this conversation with a colleague of mine today. When you have a relationship, or when you start to have relationships with people when you're in a certain particular place in your life, it's very different and it's based on different things than um, what it's based on when you get of another age. And I think that once I started to hit 25, I started meeting more people like that, where we had common grounds. We had the same interests in the same types of books. We like to do the same kinds of things, and it was very platonic, but very, very deeply interconnected, like on another level. And um, in my generation, particularly, that is very difficult to find. I find, or maybe there is something that I'm doing or I used to do that was um, less finite, where I can define my relationships in that way. It was either we were dating or we're friends. I don't date friends, and friends don't are not interested in dating me. So I always have made that clear distinction, and I think that sometimes that worked very well and sometimes it worked very badly, because it limits your how you interact with the person. And yeah, so I could get into some stories and some details, but I won't. But there are a few people that on one hand that I can say um I had a very deep spiritual connection to and still do, that the attraction was beyond physical. And I think that having that kind of relationship helps me. It helped to redefine what love means for me. And because of certain incidences that have happened in my past, I have struggled with trusting men in particular enough to believe that I can have a relationship with a man without him wanting something from me, because every man that I have met has his love has been attached to an agenda, and that comes from fatherlessness. And so um, being aware of or having those relationships where a guy maybe older or my age would step in that role without wanting anything back from me has really helped me to understand what fatherlessness does, and why the love of a man is important for a girl child to develop that sense of awareness, so that she can have those relationships, so that she's clear about what love is and what love isn't. So you don't make these kinds of decisions like, let's just make a marriage for fun. I'm not blaming anybody, but I'm just saying that that was a very it was a very, very beautiful, interesting experience, because being chosen, like just the very act, and I think that this is that what I uncovered very recently is just being chosen after I got over the whole situation. I almost said silliness, but after I got over that, I was able to see that the act of being chosen, that somebody wants me, even if it's not even real, made me feel a way. And um having that feeling, having a man say, I want you to be my wife, even if it's a lie, filled a hole inside of me that I never even knew I had. When I discovered that I had that hole, then I discovered that, a fake marriage was not better than no marriage at all. And so, to answer that question, yes, once I started to focus on, okay, a fake marriage is not what I want. I don't even want a marriage. I want to be able to get to that place where I can at least trust myself enough to open up enough to have that level of intimacy enough to believe that it is possible for love to happen without any without any conditions, because not only do the men lay down conditions on you, I lay conditions down on them. And so not I on them and them on me. So I'm not gonna love you if you don't want to marry me, or if you won't make me if you won't make this relationship official, or if you don't do this or that, then that's love. That's not unconditional love. And I have to first give myself that unconditional love, um, in order to receive that. Um, I don't even say it's unfortunate or fortunate, but the latter happened first. I met a young man who we're still friends. We're not super close. We still communicate on Facebook, but you know, who gave that to me? No intention. You can come by, like how you say you have your friends who you could just go by and they know that you're super busy, so they give you a bed for rest. They bring you a cup of tea, maybe a glass of wine, and just leave you there to be, so you could just you know and I had a friend like that. I had another male friend who I could always discuss the most deeply spiritual, um we had just amazing conversations, and he gave me a huge, huge, huge gift for I think it was my 30th birthday, one of my birthdays. He bought me this book, Rummy's Book of Love, and I may have kept it to myself for a long time because I had already started dating my husband, but it was the most loving thing anyone had ever done outside of my mother for me in a very, very long, somebody that I wasn't related to, you know, because when I read the book, it spoke about love in such a way that was so profound. It was like biblical, It was like we think about this romantic roses and candlelight and walking on a beach and sexual intimacy, but this transcended all of that. And so I definitely hold that experience in high regard, because I think that when you marry someone, to conclude, when you marry someone, that is what the kind of love you need to bring in from yourself.
That's amazing. And I am thankful in this conversation. What comes out for me very strongly is like the last one we had, if you want to be married, marry yourself first.
Yeah.
And that really gives the practice or exercises the muscles on that love of self first, and then
You want to be a coach, coach yourself first.
I'll be able to love another, and really explore why it is important for a woman to um, want to be married or get that expression of that commitment as like having arrived.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
the man asks you, well, why can't you, the woman, ask the man to marry you? Why can't I put myself at risk or be vulnerable for potential rejection or the saying, well, no, I'm not ready? And coming to a place of marrying oneself, it is confident, bold, and that strength to be able to say, well, I am complete. I know who I am. I know where I am going. And it would be wonderful to go along with you. And it's okay if you are not ready to accompany me on this journey at this time, because readiness comes different times for different people. And no hard feelings, it's a beautiful thing that doesn't change doesn't change the depth of the love of the person for you or you for that person. It just might not be the thing to do at this time. It's about timing rather than forcing it to happen. I think many times we want situations because we have this fairy tale fantasy impression of what love is about and what being with someone is about. It's not everybody you love you need to marry. And it's not everybody you marry you love, you know? So I'm just fascinated at this conversation. Thank you so much. And I was thinking over the weekend when we were preparing for this that many times the attraction is unspoken, indescribable connection of reflection of you and me and I and you. You know, it's like it's a sparkle of God's divine love that you're both experiencing. We are both experiencing, and you can decide how you want to activate or manifest that. It's no pressure or compulsion that you have to be together or live together. So I also believe that you can love many people at the same time. You just choose to be with one or with none.
Yeah, of course. And I think that really, it helps us to broaden and change our definition of what love really is, what it's supposed to really be. You know, it's a connection. It's the level of connectivity that we as human beings need in order to feel, you know. Yes, you love yourself. Yes, you want to love yourself. And that should be the first thing that you do, so that you give from an overflowing cup. And but I am a firm believer in connectivity, and that people have to be connected in order to feel whole and to feel like they have purpose. Somehow, a purpose, or the purpose of one person, is a reflection of that direct connection with the people that they have around them and how much they care. So we have some blue hands here. Look at that. Oh wow. She done painted herself with, you need to wash your hands, right? Anyway, so
Perhaps this
guys,
is what you explore before you get married, because when you get married, I cannot imagine myself married. When I say that, not in a negative way. I've had so much freedom in how I relate to people. I would need a very special person.
you would need a very special husband to understand. I mean, you can't imagine how the machine. Exactly. Yeah. And interestingly enough, yeah, totally. Interestingly enough, my husband and I have this discussion very often. What are you going to do when I start to become, when I start to become more popular, or when I have to go away on business, or when I have to meet with male clients and this? And so he's like, I'm fine. I'm secure in myself. Like, I know how you are, and I know how I am. But there's always that little voice in the back of my head, like, I don't know how the Michelle Obamas and the Hillary Clintons deal with. I'm not saying that I'm going to be into politics or anything, guys, but I'm just saying that it takes a very special type of spouse to deal with people that are public figures. And not deal with, but stand in that position of certainty that your marriage is solid. And that's why my husband and I, my current husband and I, my husband and I spend one day in the week without the children for an hour or two alone, just catching up and looking into each other's eyes and talking foolishness and doing what we need to do as a couple, because that relationship needs nourishing, and we need to get into the habit of nourishing that relationship, um, in order to have a successful marriage. And of course, before that, we need to get into the habit of nourishing ourselves, which reminds me, I need to get ready because I have to go to the gym. So it was nice to have you guys here. Please leave your comments down below and like and subscribe if you have not already done so. And please, if there is a specific element that came up in this conversation for you that you want us to explore further, we can definitely do so. Any closing statements, Ma? Any closing statements, Mom?
Well, it's been interesting as always to share, and very excited about our next series as we continue to explore having beautiful, loving relationships with men,
Yeah.
and getting rid of a lot of the fluff and all that garbage that blocks authentic, sincere, true loving relationship that connects with the essence of his goodness and my goodness, and not holding each other at ransom.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
complete.
I love it. I love it. So see you guys again next time. Thank you very much. Bye.